Imagine this. You step into a lively gathering, a place where voices intertwine in endless chatter, where laughter ripples through the air, and where people are completely absorbed in their social exchanges. Smiles are exchanged, handshakes shared, and conversations flow with animated energy. To many, this scene embodies the essence of human connection, a space where bonds are strengthened and relationships are nurtured. Now, shift your focus to a lone figure standing at the periphery. They are not anxious, nor do they appear awkward or lonely. Instead, they exude a quiet indifference, as if the entire spectacle before them holds no real significance. Lost in thought, their mind is preoccupied with something far more compelling than small talk and pleasantries. While the crowd thrives on light-hearted banter and shared enthusiasm, this individual remains detached, unmoved by the energy that captivates those around them. But why? Why do highly intelligent people often seem disengaged from social life? Is it arrogance, introversion? Or is there something far deeper at play? Could it be that intelligence naturally fosters a preference for solitude? And if so, why? Today we delve into the profound insights of Arthur Schopenhauer, one of the most brilliant and unconventional philosophers of the 19th century. His perspectives on intelligence and social life challenge everything we've been conditioned to believe. By the end of this video, you'll understand why highly intelligent individuals often find little to no value in social interactions. And the final revelation? It may just change the way you perceive your own relationships forever. Schopenhauer argued that intelligence and solitude are deeply intertwined. The more intelligent a person is, the less they rely on social interaction for stimulation or validation. Their minds are naturally rich with thoughts, ideas, and internal dialogue, making external distractions unnecessary. In his seminal work, The World as Will and Representation, he explains that the average person seeks company because, when left alone, their mind feels empty. In contrast, highly intelligent individuals possess an internal world so vast that solitude becomes a source of pleasure rather than loneliness. This prompts an essential question. Is social interaction truly vital for happiness, or is it merely a belief we've been conditioned to accept? From childhood, we're taught that forming friendships, being sociable, and engaging with others are crucial to our well-being. We're led to believe that those who prefer solitude are somehow missing out on life. Yet history paints a different picture. Some of the greatest minds, Isaac Newton, Nikola Tesla, Emily Dickinson, Franz Kafka, and even Schopenhauer himself, chose to retreat from society's noise. Were they unhappy, or did they simply grasp something most people overlook? Schopenhauer perceived socializing not as an inherent human need, but as an escape mechanism for those lacking depth. He believed that people who constantly seek interaction do so because they cannot endure the silence of their own thoughts. To him, most conversations are mere trivialities, gossip and superficial exchanges that offer little intellectual or personal value. Conversely, the intelligent person is self-sufficient. They do not seek companionship out of necessity, but rather choose it deliberately, only when it serves a higher purpose. Consider this. Have you ever felt drained after social interactions? Have you noticed that while others seem to thrive on socializing, you often feel exhausted, as though your energy is being depleted rather than replenished? If so, you're not alone. Many highly intelligent individuals report feeling disconnected from traditional social structures, not out of dislike for people, but because they recognize the illusion of social necessity. Some argue that humans are inherently social creatures, that we evolved to depend on groups for survival and emotional well-being. While this is true to an extent, Schopenhauer offered a different perspective. He believed that although social structures are beneficial for practical purposes like trade, cooperation, and external survival, they do not necessarily lead to inner fulfillment. In fact, he contended that excessive socializing often distracts from genuine personal growth. He likened people to empty vessels. Those with little intellectual depth require external stimuli, such as conversations, entertainment, and social validation, to feel complete. Meanwhile, those with rich inner worlds do not need such distractions. Their thoughts, ideas, and creativity provide an endless source of engagement, making solitude not only desirable, but essential for their intellectual and emotional well-being. This notion challenges one of modern society's deepest assumptions, that being social is inherently virtuous. But is it? Or is it simply a means of avoiding the discomfort of being alone with one's own thoughts? Schopenhauer also highlighted another issue with social life, one that intelligent individuals quickly recognize. Social interactions inherently demand conformity. People engage in predictable discussions, adhere to social norms, and suppress their true selves to fit in. Highly intelligent individuals, however, are often unwilling to do so. They favor authenticity over acceptance, depth over superficiality, and truth over mere politeness. This refusal to conform sets them apart, outliers who do not neatly fit into conventional social expectations. This explains why so many brilliant thinkers have been misunderstood, isolated, or even labeled as difficult or antisocial. It's not that they detest society, rather they see through its illusions. They understand that much of what is called connection is often just a series of scripted interactions, driven more by habit than by true meaning. But here's the real question. If intelligent people naturally gravitate towards solitude, does this mean that social life holds no value for them? Or is there a way for them to engage with society in a manner that is both meaningful and fulfilling? This is where Schopenhauer's most powerful insight emerges, one that we will explore in depth. And the final revelation will be the most transformative of all. Schopenhauer's insights challenge everything we assume about the value of social life. If highly intelligent individuals do not feel the need to be constantly surrounded by others, then what truly drives their detachment? Is it simply a preference, or is there a deeper reason why social interactions feel unnecessary or even exhausting to them? To answer this, we must explore another key concept in Schopenhauer's philosophy: the distinction between solitude and loneliness. In his view, loneliness arises from a lack of fulfillment, while solitude is a state of self-sufficiency. The majority of people fear being alone because they associate it with emotional emptiness. However, an intelligent mind does not experience solitude in the same way. In fact, Schopenhauer believed that solitude is not only beneficial, but essential for those who seek wisdom, self-reflection, and personal growth. Let's take a moment to reflect on this. Have you ever been surrounded by people yet felt completely disconnected from them? Have you ever engaged in a conversation only to realize that it holds no real meaning? This is precisely the feeling that Schopenhauer described, the awareness that much of social life is built on superficiality rather than true intellectual or emotional connection. In many ways, society conditions us to believe that being alone is unnatural, that isolation is something to be avoided at all costs. But Schopenhauer saw things differently. He argued that solitude allows for the deepest forms of thought and creativity, while constant socialization prevents true introspection. He wrote, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free." This idea is profound. It suggests that the need for social interaction is often a form of dependency, an inability to be alone with one's own thoughts. The intelligent person, however, does not fear solitude. They embrace it because it grants them the freedom to think, to create, and to understand themselves without external influence. Consider some of the greatest minds in history. Many lived in deliberate isolation, not because they were incapable of socializing, but because they found deeper fulfillment in solitude. Isaac Newton spent years alone while developing his theories of motion and gravity. Nikola Tesla chose to remain single and dedicated his entire life to his work. Emily Dickinson rarely left her home, yet she produced some of the most profound poetry ever written. These individuals were not lonely. They were immersed in the richness of their own minds. But there is another reason why intelligent people often distance themselves from social life, one that goes beyond mere preference. Schopenhauer observed that most human interactions are driven not by a genuine exchange of ideas, but by social expectations, ego, and even hidden competition. He believed that in social settings, people often seek validation rather than truth, and this can be deeply frustrating for those who value intellectual honesty. Think about this in your own life. How many conversations do you have that feel truly meaningful? How often do you encounter people who are more interested in listening than in speaking? For highly intelligent individuals, these shallow interactions can feel like a waste of time. They see through the masks that people wear. The way individuals adjust their personalities to fit social norms, the way they avoid deep discussions in favor of small talk, the way they seek approval rather than truth. Schopenhauer believed that intelligence naturally leads to a heightened awareness of these social dynamics, and the more a person becomes aware of them, the less willing they are to participate in them. He observed that intelligent individuals often struggle to find people who truly understand them, not because they are arrogant, but because their way of thinking is simply different. They see the world through a lens that most people do not, and as a result, they often feel like outsiders. But this raises a difficult question. If social life is so often filled with superficiality, should highly intelligent people isolate themselves completely? Is there any value in human relationships at all? Schopenhauer had a nuanced answer to this. He did not believe that all social interactions are meaningless, only that most of them are. He suggested that the key is selectivity. Intelligent individuals should not avoid social life entirely, but they should be highly deliberate about who they spend their time with. He advised seeking out relationships based on genuine intellectual and emotional connection rather than social obligation. He also made an important distinction between different types of solitude. There is solitude that leads to growth and reflection, and there is solitude that stems from bitterness or alienation. The former is healthy, while the latter can become destructive. Schopenhauer warned against allowing intellectual superiority to turn into contempt for others. He believed that true wisdom comes from understanding the nature of society while still maintaining a sense of detachment. So how can intelligent individuals navigate this balance? How can they embrace solitude without becoming completely disconnected from the world? The answer lies in the final and most powerful insight from Schopenhauer, one that reveals the ultimate reason why intelligent people often seem indifferent to social life and what they do instead. Schopenhauer's philosophy leads us to a striking realization, one that many intelligent individuals come to on their own, whether consciously or unconsciously. It is not that they outright reject society or lack the ability to engage in social life. Rather, they recognize a fundamental truth. Most human interactions are not based on substance, but on necessity, habit, and social conditioning. This realization changes everything. If most people engage in social life not because they truly desire deep connections, but because they fear solitude, then what does this say about the nature of human relationships? Schopenhauer believed that much of what people call friendship or companionship is often rooted in mutual need rather than genuine connection. This concept can be difficult to accept because it challenges one of our most deeply ingrained beliefs, that relationships are inherently valuable. But Schopenhauer forces us to ask, are they really? Or do we simply seek them out to avoid confronting ourselves? He argued that most friendships are transactional in nature. People befriend others not necessarily because they deeply connect with them, but because of shared circumstances, work, school, convenience. When these circumstances change, the connection often fades. This is why so many friendships dissolve over time. The bond was never truly about mutual understanding. It was about external factors that no longer exist. Intelligent individuals see this pattern and as a result become more selective with their relationships. They do not invest in connections that lack depth or authenticity. This perspective is not cynical, it is liberating. When you stop seeking validation from social life, you become free to build relationships based on genuine alignment rather than social obligation. Schopenhauer himself was highly skeptical of the idea that being well-liked or socially successful was a sign of intelligence or personal fulfillment. He noted that the most profound thinkers in history were often isolated, not because they were rejected by society, but because they chose a different path. Take, for example, Leonardo da Vinci. He was known to be deeply introspective, preferring the solitude of his studies to the distractions of social gatherings. His mind was consumed with ideas, inventions, and an endless pursuit of knowledge. He saw social interaction as a potential diversion from his true purpose. The same was true for Nikola Tesla, who famously said that he never married because he believed relationships would interfere with his work. These individuals were not lonely, they were consumed by something greater than socializing. But what is it that intelligent people seek if not social validation? The answer lies in something Schopenhauer valued above all else: wisdom. He believed that the highest form of existence was one dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge and self-mastery. For those who think deeply, time spent in contemplation is far more valuable than time spent in idle conversation. They are not interested in being popular or socially dominant. They are interested in understanding reality at a deeper level. This is where Schopenhauer's philosophy takes an even more radical turn. He suggested that true wisdom requires a form of detachment, not only from social life but from the illusions that most people live by. To him, the average person is caught in a cycle of endless distractions, chasing status, approval, and entertainment, without ever questioning why. Intelligent individuals, on the other hand, naturally distance themselves from these pursuits because they see them for what they truly are: temporary and often meaningless. Consider how much of social life revolves around performance. People carefully curate their identities, filtering their words and actions to align with societal norms. There is an unspoken pressure to conform, to be agreeable, to maintain appearances, and to avoid uncomfortable truths. But for those who see through this, participation in such a system feels exhausting. Schopenhauer described this as the burden of clarity. The more you understand, the less you can tolerate illusions. This does not mean that intelligent people never engage in social life. Rather, they approach it with a different mindset. They are not attached to it, nor do they define themselves by it. They see it as something that can be useful at times, but unnecessary for their deeper fulfillment. This is why so many intellectuals prefer small, meaningful conversations over large gatherings. It is why they gravitate toward those who challenge them intellectually rather than those who simply provide companionship. But here lies the greatest paradox. While intelligent individuals often withdraw from social life, they are also the ones most capable of understanding human nature at its deepest level. Their solitude is not a rejection of humanity, it is an attempt to understand it from a clearer perspective. Schopenhauer himself believed that wisdom comes from observing life without being fully immersed in it. Only by stepping back can one see the full picture. This idea challenges everything we are taught about the importance of social life. If deep thinking naturally leads to solitude, then perhaps the true measure of intelligence is not social success, but the ability to be alone without feeling incomplete. This is a concept that modern society struggles to accept because it contradicts the belief that social connection is the highest form of fulfillment. But Schopenhauer forces us to ask, is it really? Or have we simply been conditioned to believe that because solitude is uncomfortable for most people? As we approach Schopenhauer's final and most profound insight, we must confront the ultimate question. If intelligent individuals do not care about social life, then what do they value above all else? And how can this realization transform our understanding of life itself? The way we approach our own lives is crucial. The final revelation, when it comes, will be profound beyond measure. If intelligent individuals fail to place significant importance on social life, what then do they value above all else? What gives their lives meaning, if not the approval, companionship, or validation of others? Schopenhauer's ultimate insight is both profound and unsettling. The highest form of fulfillment does not come from external sources, but from within. He argued that those who seek happiness through social life are often chasing a fleeting illusion. Meanwhile, those who cultivate deep knowledge and self-mastery attain something far more enduring. At the core of his philosophy is the idea that human suffering arises from endless desires, the insatiable craving for recognition, pleasure, and distraction. Most people, he observed, spend their lives in restless pursuit, chasing relationships, status, and entertainment, believing these things will bring them happiness. Yet, even when they attain their desires, the satisfaction is temporary. Soon, a new craving emerges, and the cycle begins again. Intelligent individuals, however, are more likely to see through this illusion. They understand that true contentment cannot be found in external validation, but in a life aligned with deeper purpose and understanding. This is why they often withdraw from superficial social interactions. It's not that they despise people. Rather, they refuse to engage in distractions that take them away from their true pursuits. This realization is life-changing because it forces us to ask, what if everything we've been taught about fulfillment is wrong? What if happiness does not come from being surrounded by others, but from developing our own minds and souls? Schopenhauer believed that the most intelligent people do not fear solitude, for they have learned to be at peace with themselves. Rather than seeking external stimulation, they cultivate inner richness. They read, reflect, create, and pursue knowledge, not to gain social admiration, but because it is its own reward. He wrote, "The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him." In other words, those who are deeply intelligent and introspective do not see life in simplistic, surface-level terms. They question, analyze, and search for meaning. As a result, they often feel disconnected from mainstream society, which tends to avoid deep existential questions. But here lies Schopenhauer's most powerful argument. Solitude is not merely a preference, it is a necessity for those who seek true wisdom. He warned that the noise of society can prevent an individual from developing independent thought. The expectations of others, the pressures to conform, the constant distractions, these forces pull people away from the most important journey they can take, the journey inward. For this reason, he saw solitude not as isolation, but as liberation. He believed that the greatest minds in history reached their full potential not by immersing themselves in social life, but by turning inward, away from the noise, and into the quiet of their own thoughts. But by stepping away from it, by detaching from the ordinary concerns of society, they were able to see reality more clearly and devote themselves to higher pursuits. This challenges everything modern culture tells us about social life. We are constantly encouraged to network, to build relationships, to avoid being alone. Yet Schopenhauer forces us to reconsider, is this truly necessary, or have we simply been conditioned to believe so because society fears solitude? If we look at history, we see that many of the most remarkable thinkers, artists, and inventors lived in partial or complete withdrawal from mainstream life. They were not interested in casual socialization or mindless entertainment. They were consumed by something greater, ideas, work, and the search for meaning. But does this mean that social life has no value at all? Schopenhauer did not go that far. He acknowledged that human relationships can be meaningful, but only when they are based on genuine intellectual or emotional depth. He warned against surrounding oneself with people merely to avoid loneliness. He argued that if one must choose between superficial company and solitude, solitude is always the better option. So where does this leave us? Should we abandon social life entirely? Not necessarily. However, Schopenhauer's insights offer a radical shift in perspective. Instead of seeking fulfillment through others, we must first find it within ourselves. Instead of fearing solitude, we should embrace it as a tool for growth and self-discovery. Instead of chasing social validation, we should pursue knowledge, wisdom, and personal excellence. This is the ultimate realization. Highly intelligent people do not care about social life because they have discovered something far more valuable, the ability to think independently, to create freely, and to exist without the need for constant external validation. They understand that true fulfillment is not found in the presence of others, but in the cultivation of the self. So now the question turns to you. What would your life look like if you embraced solitude as a strength instead of a weakness? If you stopped seeking external validation and focused instead on your own growth, how much more could you achieve? Perhaps the greatest minds in history were not outliers but pioneers, and perhaps the path they walked, the path of introspection, independence, and intellectual freedom, is the very path that leads to the deepest form of fulfillment. Thanks for watching.